The snow fell softly that December evening, blanketing the small mountain town in white silence. Sarah Mitchell stood at the window of her modest cabin, watching the flakes dance in the porch light. At 28, she'd learned to find peace in simple things: a warm fire, a good book, the quiet company of her own thoughts. She'd moved here 3 years ago, after her grandmother passed, leaving her this cabin and little else. Sarah worked at the local diner, her tips barely covering the bills, but she never complained. Her grandmother had taught her that wealth wasn't measured in dollars, but in the kindness you showed others. A knock at the door startled her from her reverie. Through the frosted glass, she could see a tall man with dark hair and a thick scarf wrapped around his neck. He was holding a small child bundled in a plaid jacket, the boy's head resting against his father's shoulder. Something about the way the man stood hunched slightly against the cold, protective of his son touched Sarah's heart. She opened the door to find them both covered in snow, the man's face etched with worry and exhaustion. "I'm so sorry to disturb you," he said, his voice rough from the cold. "My car broke down about a mile back. The main road is closed due to the storm, and my phone has no signal. My son, he's only 5, and he's getting so cold." The man paused, his dark eyes meeting hers with quiet desperation. "I saw your light. I know it's asking a lot, but could we possibly wait inside until morning? I promise we'll leave as soon as the road's clear." Sarah looked at the sleeping child in his arms, the boy's cheeks pink from the cold, his small body shivering even in sleep. She thought of her grandmother, who never turned anyone away. "Of course," she said, stepping aside. "Please, come in. You both must be freezing." The relief that washed over the man's face was immediate. "Thank you. I'm David. This is my son, Tommy." As they entered, Sarah noticed David's good coat, now soaked through, and the quality of Tommy's boots, expensive things that spoke of a different life than hers. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was the warmth of her fire and the hot soup she could offer. "Sit by the fire," she urged gently. "I'll get you both some blankets and something warm to drink." David settled into the worn armchair, still holding Tommy close. Sarah brought thick quilts and mugs of hot cocoa, watching as David carefully woke his son just enough to sip the warm drink. The tenderness in his movements, the way he tested the cocoa's temperature, the gentle way he spoke to Tommy reminded Sarah of her own father, gone now for many years. "I can make you some soup," Sarah offered. "It's not much, just vegetable soup, but it's hot and filling." "That would be wonderful," David said quietly. "You're very kind." Not many people would open their door to strangers in the middle of the night. Sarah smiled softly as she ladled soup into bowls. "My grandmother always said that strangers are just friends we haven't met yet. She raised me in this cabin, taught me that what we have isn't as important as what we share." As they ate, Tommy began to wake up more fully, his bright eyes taking in the cozy cabin with its handmade quilts and simple furniture. "Daddy, I like it here," he murmured sleepily. "It feels nice." David's eyes met Sarah's, and she saw something shift in his expression, a kind of wonder mixed with sadness. "Yes, son, it does feel nice." They talked into the evening, the storm continuing to rage outside. David spoke carefully at first, then more openly as the hours passed. He told her about Tommy's mother, who'd passed away 2 years earlier, and how he'd been struggling to balance work with being the father Tommy needed. He didn't mention what his work was, and Sarah didn't ask. It didn't seem to matter here, in this moment, with the fire crackling and the world reduced to this small circle of warmth. Sarah shared her own story growing up with her grandmother, learning to appreciate the simple beauty of mountain life, the loss she'd felt when the old woman died. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing enough with my life," she admitted. "But then I remember what she told me, do small things with great love, and you'll never be poor." David was quiet for a long moment. "Your grandmother was a wise woman." As midnight approached, Sarah made up her small guest room for them, insisting they take the bed while she took the couch. "Tommy needs proper rest," she said firmly, "and so do you." In the morning, the storm had passed, leaving the world transformed in brilliant white. Sarah woke to find David already up, standing at the window with a cup of coffee. Tommy still sleeping soundly in the next room. "The roads should be clear soon," David said softly. "But Sarah, I need to tell you something." He turned to face her, and she saw a mix of emotions playing across his features: gratitude, respect, and something that looked like regret. My full name is David Harrison. I run Harrison Industries. We manufacture medical equipment. Well, people would call me wealthy. He paused, watching her carefully. Last night, driving up here with Tommy, I was running away from the pressure, the loneliness, the feeling that I'd lost myself somewhere in all the success. I told Tommy we were going on an adventure, just the two of us, to find something real. Sarah absorbed this quietly, then smiled. And did you find it? David's eyes grew warm. Yes, in the kindness of a young woman who has every reason to protect what little she has, but chose to share it anyway. Sarah, you showed us what really matters. Tommy and I, we've been living in a big, empty house, surrounded by things but starving for Tiza, for genuine warmth, for human connection. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone, now charged from Sarah's outlet. I want to do something for you, not as payment. You can't pay for what you've given USA, but as a thank you. Sarah shook her head gently. You don't need to do anything. Seeing you and Tommy safe is enough. But David persisted, his voice thick with emotion. Please, let me help with the cabin repairs I noticed. Let me set up a trust for the local food bank in your grandmother's name. Let me show Tommy that when people show us kindness, we honor it by passing it forward. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Your grandmother would have liked that, she whispered. Before they left, Tommy hugged Sarah tightly. Will we see you again? He asked, his small voice hopeful. David met Sarah's eyes over his son's head. I hope so. I really hope so. As she watched them drive away in the tow truck that had finally arrived, Sarah felt something shift in her heart. She'd given them shelter for one night, but they'd given her something too, a reminder that kindness creates connections that transcend wealth or circumstance, and that sometimes the greatest gifts come in the simplest moments. 2 weeks later, Sarah opened her door to find David and Tommy on her porch again, this time with sunshine overhead and warm smiles on their faces. We wondered, David said softly, if you might join us for dinner sometime, not at some fancy restaurant, but maybe here. Tommy and I could bring the groceries, and you could teach us how to make that vegetable soup. Sarah's smile was all the answer they needed. In the months that followed, the cabin that had once held just one became a home for three hearts learning to heal together. And Sarah's grandmother, if she'd been there to see it, would have nodded knowingly, because she'd always said that love and kindness have a way of multiplying, even in the coldest of winters, warming everything they touch.